Hello YouTube, this is Sam Gerrans from Qur'anite.com. Today is Saturday the 8th of June 2019, and today you find me in New Orleans, I'm never quite sure how you say it. However you say it, not how I say it. And I'm on the Esplanade, I think it's called, making my way down to the French Quarter. Amazing architecture, it is, there's no doubt about it. And I've got a couple of more thoughts about America and things American since I've been here, because this is part of why I've come here. If you know my channel, you know that I'm not a travel vlogger or anything like that. I'm basically about doing one's due diligence on the Qur'an to see its relevance for today, and especially vis-a-vis the ruling elite. That's you know what I'm about. Actually, while I'm talking, I'll just show you some of these houses. Aren't they amazing? They really are incredible. So a couple more thoughts. I spent a day or two in San Antonio, Texas, and there I met up with someone who's been associated with my work for a long time. And just to say that if you've contacted me out of the blue to say, hey, I know you're on your journey around America, come and see me. Well, I am only really going to see people that I already have a contact with over time. It's just sensible. So that's the way that I operate. One of the things that he mentioned when I was talking with this chap, and he's pointed this out, I thought, yeah, you're absolutely right, is to do with how they're kind of downgrading independent transport in almost every city that I've been in. In fact, I think in every city that I've been in, there's been a system of scooters, which are electrified scooters that you appear to be able to use for free, or maybe you have to download an app or something, but pretty much you can just take these things, a bit like the kind of bicycle shares, and you get bicycle shares everywhere. And we have bicycle shares in Russia, and we have all the same stuff, all happening in Russia too. This is supposed to be America's enemy. We have all the you cannot smoke here stuff, all in Russia, everything. There's basically one agenda. Anyway, going back to what he was saying, I think he's right. I think people are being trained that you don't really have a full right to an independent vehicle. All the roads have been built, and in time it's going to be just, they're going to sort of eco-shame you out of using a vehicle, and it's all going to be just car shares and bike shares and virtue signalling and renting something for 5 minutes if you really, really need it, but not being able to get out and do anything independently. And this is the feeling I get in all of these cities, the smart city syndrome. And we have this where I live, so it's nothing new, is that you're basically being tracked and traced, monitored. Well, not individually, but all your stuff's going into some big data mining operation somewhere. I'll just show you this house while I hold forth. And everywhere good, the city centres, like where I am now, because you come into New Orleans and it's a hellhole up until you get to the last, whatever it is, couple of square miles, and it's like this, fantastic. So each city has got this tourist centre, which is a sort of an oasis of unreality in a sea of more unreality. And but the underlying reality is that wherever you go, you will be tracked and chased, tracked and traced. Yeah, I've got some bicycles over here. It's not quite what I meant, but can you see those? Yeah, we have those all over the city where I live in Russia. They're a different colour, but they're pretty much the same thing. Another thing that I've noticed, I'm just going to get this in before I get to the noisy intersection down there, is the militarization of this society, even using Amtrak. And I'm going to say this now, I'm predicting a false flag bomb on Amtrak at some point in the next year or two, so that they can then get you to go through all the nonsense that you have to go through on planes. Getting on and off Amtrak is fairly simple. However, they still treat you like there's still this militaristic aspect to it. Excuse me, sir, I need you to stand there behind this red line. Do not move until I say go. When I say go, you may move. Do not move before I say go. And you can start, if you don't check yourself, you can start feeling a little bit dependent on these people, like the Stockholm syndrome. You've been, and you see people kind of wanting to please the abuser. And I'm not saying all the people in these jobs are bad people. I'm not even saying they're bad at their jobs. What I do see is an aspect of abuse between those who are supposed to serve you and those who are the customers, and in a service culture where we are. Hold on, I've just got to stop this thought. There's something here called. It's called Straight to University. I thought, this place is so far gone, they actually need somewhere to learn how to be normal. But that isn't what it is, it's something else. And a lot of these guys have got the military voice, and you know, the Iraq door kicking, Abu Ghraib torturing sort of voice. And they're using it on you, the guy who pays their salaries. And this is becoming normalized. There was a comic when I was a little boy. I was never into comics, but I knew people who read them, called Judge Dredd. That's where this is all going. You have been judged. And you can see it incrementally coming through. And this is not just here. And what's interesting for me is how universal all of this is. The same agenda, the same homosexual agenda, the same no smoking agenda, the same bicycle agenda, the same scooter agenda. Doesn't matter where you go, it's all the same, and people think they have a choice. And also people will mock or ridicule anybody who sees a pattern here, that there is one ruling elite, and there's basically there's a high level executive. And the people we think we vote for, they're just sort of middle managers, and that's all. And that's all. But there's one plan, and basically it's one franchise. Sure, and I liken it to McDonald's or Burger King. Yeah, the guy you vote for, perhaps he can decide to choose to close 5 minutes early or 5 minutes late, but he doesn't get to choose the menu. He doesn't get to choose anything like that. So they're all on the same plan, and the job of the people we supposedly vote for is to keep us thinking we've got a choice. I just stopped someone on the street, a very pleasant young woman, asked her some directions to the French Quarter, and I kind of know where it is anyway, but it's a good way to talk to people. And she was very forthcoming, and it turns out that today is New Orleans Gay Pride Day. What are the odds? What I see here as someone with a Russian background, someone who's spent a lot of time in Russia and knows Russian history to a certain extent, is the easy comparison between the ideology of Comintern and the sort of the communist international and cultural Marxism of today. For my money, it's the same people, the same agenda. They realised that they weren't going to get people to, well, they could get people to move on an ideological basis, but the only way to do that was to appeal to their own atomised sense of entitlement. Now that happened to a large extent with Workers of the World Unite and all the rest of that nonsense. And from each according to his ability to each according to his need, which obviously sounds great but doesn't ever work or ever result in anything except in mass murders. They've got the same system going here, and now they're using the homosexuals. Homosexuals actually lived pretty, I hate to use the word, but unmolested lives for a long time, and I'm certainly not in favour of antagonising or persecuting anybody, but now they're using the agenda is using these people to get the rest of us, and it's getting really, really scary. So, and also, if you don't agree with the agenda, if you're somehow not sufficiently happy about it or gay, then they're going to come around and do something about it. Objectively, were I a homosexual, I would do everything I could to try to protect the heterosexual community, because it reminds me of what the Armenians used to say about the Jews. Look after the Jews, because when they finish with them, they're coming for us. And that's what's happening here. They'll use the agenda has got no friends. It's got no real allegiances. It will use any demographic that it can to push through the agenda. And homosexuals are political. This is a political movement. There's no way you can claim that this is in any way. Just checking I'm not going to get run over there. This isn't a sexual movement, it's a political movement. It's a communist movement which, instead of wrapping itself in a red flag, is wrapping itself in a rainbow flag. But if you want to know how it ends, just look at communist history, because it's always the same. Socialism always kills. As with socialism, as with communism, this new communism, which is using, at the moment it's using homosexuals, but it'll use whoever doesn't care. It uses slogans, and the slogans are meaningless. And if you read around the more conspiratorial literature of the end of the 19th century, I'm thinking here particularly of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, they say in it quite clearly that they will use meaningless phrases. So meaningless phrases such as, workers of the world unite and all this nonsense have been, that's nothing compared to this one. Here now we've got what's called gay pride. Well, there's nothing gay about being homosexual, being a sodomite. It just isn't. They have very high suicide rates, fanatically promiscuous, and illness, emotional instability. I'm not saying it's true for all, but certainly those tendencies are there. And pride in what? Buggering each other? It's nonsense. It is nonsense. And if you see it as nonsense now, it's not just that you think that sodomy is not something that should be promoted. You're evil. You're evil. And this goes back to what I was talking about the other day, where under this socialist agenda, you're bad for seeing it. It's not that it's bad, it's you're bad. If you were good, if you were virtuous, you wouldn't notice. You wouldn't notice sin and evil, just wouldn't see it. And that is a very clever, a very effective manipulation of the mind, and this is how socialism works. And again, I'm sort of banging on about it, but socialism kills. It always does, in large numbers. It has to, because it has to blame those who will not get with the program and see them as evil, and that their extirpation is the solution to the underlying problem with their ideology. I've come down a side street off the main thoroughfare to get a breath of sanity. There's the big build up to this big gay pride, quote unquote, march or whatever, parade. Sodomy is such a wonderful thing that it has to be shoved down your throat. Looking at the people there, there's just a very high contingent, I would say, of just, not obviously sexually deviant, and that's not really a value judgment, it's just an objective fact, but psychologically very unhinged people walking around. You can see also that, just knowing the way that socialism works, that once these people have contributed to the agenda and broken down the family and destroyed what was left, they'll get thrown under the bus, because that's the way it always works. After any revolution, the people that the ruling elite go after will be the foot soldiers, especially the foot soldiers who know too much. That's just standard operating procedure. I've taken refuge under a palm tree in a park somewhere away from all of the gayness, because I just don't share the joy, the happiness. I don't know, it just must be me. I'm not understanding something. But leaving that subject to one side, towns like this are, and I've seen this quite a lot in America, they are already caricatures of themselves. I mean, there must have been a time when New Orleans was a place where people played jazz, and then it got a reputation for that, and now people play jazz because of the reputation rather than have a reputation because people play jazz. So rather than playing, real jazz, whatever I mean by that, they're playing the one or two standards that everybody knows when the Saints, there you go, when the Saints come marching in. So it's Disneyland with sodomy and voodoo. I feel almost as if I'm here undercover, the closet heterosexual traditional believer in God in amongst Sodom and Gomorrah, and it really does feel like Sodom and Gomorrah. Again, I'm not here to judge it exactly. I already knew all of this, but to see it all in one place, celebrating whatever it is that it's celebrating. I'm not quite sure what that is. I suppose post-modernity. I suppose that's what it's really celebrating. The absence of any moral order, the absence of any true objective code of decency. And I don't really feel like celebrating that, but I'm quite happy to look at it. Another thought here, really to do with America, is the land that never grew up and the land that never will grow up. What you've got here is institutionalized moral infantilism. And it's not that Americans are completely infantile in all ways. In business, they're shrewd, they're extremely well organized, they're utterly ruthless in a lot of cases. So it's not a generalized idiocy, but it's a very particularized kind of stupidity and a refusal to grow up. And in fact, it's not only a refusal to grow up, it's a denial of the recognition that there is anywhere to grow up into, and that growing up is perhaps some kind of sin or just some sort of arbitrary moral judgment of some kind imposed upon people unkindly. It reminds me also, there's a Russian cartoon from the Soviet era called Neznayka na Lunie. And Neznayka na Lunie is there's one part of the story where they have this Ostrov Durakov, I think it is, the island of fools, and what they find is that the people on the island are running around a bit like at Disney World, going on all of these rides, but actually what they're doing is they're cranking the engine that's producing the tyranny, but the mechanism is underneath the island, so they don't see it, they don't realise that that's what's going on. And for my money, America is, Ostrov Durakov, and they're using the basest lusts, the basest desires, and leveraging those to achieve the new tyranny, the tyranny of stupidity and moral subjectivity. I think of it, I saw a guy here, about my age, maybe a bit older, quite a lot, kind of chunkier than me, clearly working in some, tech company or something, but with his family, but he had to virtue signal, and he had this t-shirt, and on the back of it, it summarised clearly something to do with his work, their key values, and they were all very worthy and very communism 2.0. But the last one was inclusivity and civility. And I thought that was a very interesting choice of words, inclusivity and civility. And what that means is you better get with the plan and keep your mouth shut, because if you don't, you're going to lose your job. And that's what inclusivity and civility means in America. It means shut your face and smile. And this is something that I've seen in America, the way of saying one thing by saying something else. They do a lot of us thanking you for your cooperation when really what they're just doing is telling you what to do. And this is just, I suppose, a feature of living in a world which is as bizarre and unreal as this one. I think eventually I have now found America, the heartbeat of it, its beating essence, and it is here in New Orleans on Bourbon Street in the middle of a quote-unquote gay pride parade. All of the features that I've seen in America, all of the mercantilism, the brutality, the hypocrisy, the superficiality, the stupidity, frankly, find their fullest and finest expression on this street. I have seen hell, and this is what it looks like. And what I didn't know about hell that I now know about hell is that hell is going to require you to smile when you're in it and to celebrate its achievements. I've taken refuge in one of these back streets to try to get away from the total insanity just for a second and get some shade as well. I'll put together a few thoughts about the whole homosexual agenda, because this place is going to force you to do that. Firstly, for me personally, I don't bear any particular animosity towards homosexuals. It is a deviancy, it is a sin, it is pretty evil. Well, it is evil, but is it the only evil thing in the world? No, of course not. There's tons of other evil stuff. So it's not about persecuting people and treating them as pariahs. It's not about that. But what's happening here is a promotion of this. And Quranically speaking, the homosexual deviancy falls under the same remit as heterosexual deviancy, quite frankly, under the farhish laws, and where discretion is the better part of valor. And this isn't discretion, and that's really my primary issue with it. I will say one thing: if you want your dietary requirements taken care of, you could do a lot worse than going to a restaurant around here, where they were extremely accommodating, extremely helpful, very nice. So if niceness is your criterion, then it's all fine. But it isn't just about this. You see, there's another agenda going on here, and that's really what I want to address. So, is it a deviancy? Sure, of course it's a deviancy. It's obviously a mental illness in an awful lot of cases, and a sexual deviancy. Is it the only deviancy? I mean, drug addiction and all kinds of other things? No, of course not. Of course not. But it is a deviancy. So let's not pretend that it isn't. So I'm not. It's not that I'm against. I mean, I am against it, but it's not that I'm against people being homosexual if that's what they decide they are. And I think there is an element of decision there, although they claim there isn't. I don't know if I believe that, but okay. What I am against is the wholesale weaponization of it against the broader society, and that's what I see happening here. I'm also against, if you want to call it this, against the moral relativism which this imposes. It's really the postmodernism made manifest, because if there is no standard, if there is no right and wrong, then then men can sodomize each other in the streets with small children looking on, and who are you to say that it's not right? I am certainly against the self-imposed or the imposition of a self-imposed myopia, which this demands. It requires that you don't notice it. It requires that you sort of smile beatifically and look into the middle distance and sort of basically comply with everything that's going on. I'm also against the door to paedophilia, which this necessarily opens. Because if there is no normal, then there is no deviancy. And if there is no deviancy, then everything goes. And if anything goes, then it's just a matter of your opinion. And what I've seen happen here with homosexualization is that, first of all, it claims a few cases, and then it claims all homosexuals are wonderful and charming and all the rest of it. And then after a while, you're losing your job because you don't go along with it. Well, if that holds for this, it holds for your children too. And that's the problem with moral relativism, is there is no end to it. And having seen this, imposed in my lifetime, the last 20, 25 years, then you have no moral grounds to argue against paedophilia, and that's where this has always been going. So in summary, for me, the quote-unquote gay thing is, and I don't mean homosexual inclinations per se, I mean the promotion of it. It's a moral Hoover Dam. Once the floodgates are opened, all bets are off, and that's what you see here. So for me here, what I've seen today in New Orleans on this particular day, really, for me, is America personified. It is the lack of any moral restraint, the imposition of relativism, not just as a sort of subjective decision, but imposed upon you. You see clearly closet heterosexuals walking around, you know, kind of smiling through gritted teeth, but smiling nevertheless. And that's really where I think this country is going. You're going to have to smile your way into the gulag. It doesn't just want your compliance, it wants celebration. You're going to have to celebrate it. And when you start celebrating this tyranny, it's going to come after you, even if you do celebrate it, but you're not celebrating it hard enough. So for me, I think I found the throbbing underside of America, and it's here just off Bourbon Street, or on Bourbon Street in the French Quarter of New Orleans on Gay Pride March Day. This is where it's all going, and actually my sense here is correct, I think, which is that if you don't celebrate hard enough, you don't celebrate, you know, virtuously enough, you're going to be in trouble. And as far as this system is concerned, I am an outsider. I'm a counter-revolutionary. In fact, I think being married and faithful to your wife and believing in God is going to be a criminal offence at some point. You're going to have to sign waivers and disclaimers and all the rest of it. This doesn't just want your acquiescence. This wants you to celebrate it. It wants you to celebrate it. Well, I don't feel like celebrating. And if that makes me a bad person, I'm a bad person. And frankly, I'd rather be a bad person here and acceptable to God than a good person here and condemned to the fire. I'll go with that. So that's it. I'm going to sign off now. And next stop is Atlanta, Georgia. If you're listening on YouTube, you can download my full translation of the Qur'an free using the button in the top right hand corner, or buy the hard copy there at 10% less than on Amazon. I also encourage you to sign up for the Qur'anite Plus newsletter on the site to get occasional micro updates. You can download the audio from my YouTube videos to your mobile device using the links in the drop down below. I recommend meetquranites.com to connect with other Qur'an alone believers. Like if you like, comment if you have something constructive to say, and subscribe to get more each week. And use the link in the drop down below to donate if you would like to help me keep doing this. And remember, this life is short, eternity is long. If you want good trees, plant good seeds.